What's going on, Station Athletics? My name is JJ Valentin. I'm the head of media here at Station Athletics, and I'm here alongside Joe Pa, our CEO and founder. And episode 90, 90 episodes of the Movement Mindset Podcast.
Yeah,
This
is like, we're getting there.
We're getting there.
This one's half of a repeat. We did something similar to this once before.
Before me.
Yeah, but we wanted to, I'll kind of let you finish, but there's a reason why we circled back to this.
So this episode, we're going to be talking about the new food pyramid. So a little history on this. There was the original food pyramid that came out in the 1990s. It was 1992 to about 2010, which had mainly grains was your focus, carbohydrates and grains with moderate dairy and protein and all that other stuff. And then that's what Joe grew up with, was the original pyramid. I grew up with the 2011 through 2025 food plate, which is 50% fruits, 25% grains, 25% protein, and then dairy on the side. And
It's own little bubble.
yeah, own little bubble, not even on the actual plate. I'll make sure to show graphics of what I'm talking about too. And then recently in 2026,
This is like 3 months ago.
yeah, I mean, we are
this
in
is-
March.
This is literally,
So
this just happened.
RFK just came out with the new food pyramid, which is basically how we live now, where it's like emphasizes whole foods, higher protein intake, reduce ultra processed foods and sugars, kind of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like flips the original one upside down.
It's straight up the pyramid that I grew up on, and most people that listen to this are gonna that like understood this. If you were like born in the 80s and 90s, this is like was like drilled into your head of like, if you want to be big and strong, this is what you have to do. Like I remember when I was a kid, the big emphasis was drink milk, be big and strong.
Even I heard that though.
Yeah, they did that for a long time,
dense
and
bones.
it was just like, but everything, what it all came down to was, if you really think about it, everything came down to like some sort of aggressive marketing. We were talking off air about this, about how like I still remember to this day, probably 10 to 12 of my childhood cereal commercial songs. Like Fruit Loops, Cheerios. You remember all the characters.
I remember the characters.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the songs embedded.
Yeah, but it was like such a big thing, like the way that they attacked you with commercials. But anyways, we'll kind of touch on all this. But it's just I wanted to kind of do this again. I did this with Chris a few years ago. It was one of our beginning episodes, under 20. And we talked about, that's when they recently changed the food pyramid again, kind of in between what I grew up on and then what JJ just talked about. There was one in between, but it wasn't like a government released one. That's going to be
It's kind of like an unofficial.
yeah,
just like
but it was released and it was a lot better. So when you look at the original food pyramid, and you'll pop this on this video if you watch this, you'll kind of see it. It was so heavily from the structure of what you should eat. It was all the presence was on basically carbs in different variations, but they didn't kind of separate what we would consider like a simple or a complex carb, right? So for a basic understanding, a complex carb is going to be something like a bread, right? Something that's processed, something with a gluten aspect to it. Okay. A simple carb is going to be something like rice, not brown rice. White rice is considered a simple based carb. Fruit is a carb, but it's a simple carb. Veggies are a simple carb. So they were all categorizing a lot of the breads, cereals, and rices kind of all into the same. And the serving requirement on a whole food diet on the original one was anywhere from 6 to 11 servings a day. Just to give you an idea of how much it is, it's like a whole fucking loaf of bread.
That's a lot of bread. That's a lot of carbs.
It's a lot of carbs.
A lot of carbs.
A lot of carbs you're looking at, right? But you're also talking about carbs that could have a processed food piece to it. So it's not what we would consider real whole food.
It does also, it specifies cereal in it, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. So just so everyone's aware, if you've listened to us for a while, if you're familiar with the obesity epidemic in the United States, above 18, I believe the number is around 78 or 79% of Americans are considered obese or morbidly obese. Okay. And when 18 and under, it's around 55-ish, 57% is obese or morbidly obese.
Damn,
It's fucked up.
that's a lot.
Okay, so let's backtrack, right? So when I was a kid, every morning for breakfast, I ate cereal because it was what was drilled into my head of, oh, you need to have this is a part of your well-rounded breakfast, right? And that's what it was. It wasn't bacon, like it wasn't that. It was milk in cereal, in very high sugar dense cereal, right?
Fruit Loops.
Yeah, Fruit
Captain
Loops.
Crunch.
Like for me, like Lucky Charms was like,
Little marshmallows.
Yeah, the little marshmallows, but like that was drilled into my head, right? Of that's what was required. So then years later, you look at it and like I haven't had cereal and I can't even tell you how long. But for the longest time, it was still like drilled into my head of like, oh, it's breakfast time. Oh, I have to eat cereal, right? Like that's just like what it is, like how they categorize breakfast foods and things like that. So that was just something, but that was done through marketing from big grain and big dairy to sell more consumables. Okay. And the government was told to not do this from creation of this food pyramid that we're talking about right now, because you're going to cause a obesity epidemic in the United States. So now if you fast forward 50 years roughly, right? Look at the problem we're dealing with now. There's more obese people in our country probably.
It is an epidemic.
Yeah, it's bad.
It is an
It's
epidemic.
really, really bad. The classifications of obesity to morbidly obesity kind of ranges, but the problem is people don't exercise on a regular basis, and then they don't eat right.
Ton of processed foods.
Yeah.
Ton of sugar. It's
Everything has sugar
Look at
in
the
it.
ingredients list. It's like a freaking encyclopedia for every single product.
Well, exactly. So that's kind of my point of like when you talk about carbohydrates, it's not necessarily like right now there's like I call it right now I laugh at everyone's making sourdough bread, right? It's everywhere. Patty, you've probably been making it. Thank God, don't. Right? But everyone's doing that. But it's actually not bad for you to eat that because there's nothing processed in it.
Yeah.
Right? There's it doesn't last that long. So like if you go, I don't know, JJ, if you've done this, but like I'm sure Patty, you have. I've bought in bread before, and the bread will last for fucking weeks.
It happens all the time.
Right? But like that shouldn't happen. But then, right, I've had people like Courtney make bread or Kelsey's made bread for me. And it's like my mom makes bread. She's like a bread maker. So like once in a while she'll make me bread. It only lasts like 3 days.
I think it's fresh.
Yeah, because there's no preservative in it. Okay. So that's kind of the last thing we'll kind of jump. So understanding what's going into the food, which is making it last. So like I don't think you know this, and I use this example on one of our previous podcasts. If you take something as simple as a McDonald's French fry, United States to Europe, how many ingredients are there, do you think, in just a French fry in the United States?
I know it's a lot more. I could not tell you an exact number though.
So it's 23 plus an option of salt in a regular potato. Okay. How many in Europe?
It's probably like 5. if
Two
that.
2 plus option of salt.
Jesus.
Okay. So that's kind of the big difference here of understanding processed food, but really understanding how the processed food got like kind of like distinguished and like set in stone of like, this is what you have to eat. It's from these giant companies like Kellogg and like these big food companies drilling marketing into people's heads.
It is funny too, because if you go, I remember I went to Europe 2 summers ago. We went to Manchester. We stayed with a host family. They took us to McDonald's, and the amount of stuff that we ordered was like a typical like American meal, right?
Yeah.
Like I had chicken nuggets. It was like a 10, 15, 20p, whatever it was, and then a burger, and then fries. My host family looked at me and my my teammate who was staying with me, and they were just like, "You're gonna eat all that?" And we're like,
Really?
"Yeah."
Yeah, because the portion control is so different.
It is, and then on top of that, like it's not as flavorful. Like you can tell that there was less ingredients. You can tell that it just wasn't. It was a little more bland, but you can tell it was also healthy for you.
Have you ever heard of people that go like to Italy or something and they're like, I feel so great and I ate pasta and this? It's because all the fresh ingredients.
Talk about Italy getting carb heavy.
I know.
All they eat is carbs over
I
there.
know. Yeah, but they're not heavy though. The people that live there, right? There's not like an overweight problem, right? Because portion controls. The United States by default is, I don't know if you ever been to Cheesecake Factory before?
Oh my God, Cheesecake Factory is awful.
Well, first the menu
good.
the menu is like 90 pages long, right? And then everything you order, the portions are like all family style share portions, but they're made for one person.
If you look at the calories up from too, it's
crazy.
Every single meal is like 2,000 calories.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. So so if you kind of compare, the reason why I use the French fry one is because you even take a company like McDonald's that's massive, selling millions and millions of items a day, right? And the reason why that they do it is because it saves them money long term, because there's less waste. So the product lasts longer, so their margins are higher because there's less waste, right? So we talked about this off air. The biggest thing here is understanding the original. We'll kind of go through each piece of this again. I just wanted to kind of say one more thing was the marketing that they did to us when we were kids or before that, right? Even my mom's in her 60s. And I remember vividly my mom like, oh, like you have to, you know, if you want to do good in sports and this, like you have to follow the food model, right? So that's when like you normalize certain items that today I wouldn't even, like I'll eat it, but it's more so like, it's not like a daily occurrence, right? We'll get to kind of like what like a proper meal should look like. But what I'm getting at is the marketing was so honed in on young adults and children and the way it was portrayed. I just said this off air. When I was a kid, I remember my dad wanted to smack the shit out of me because I said, oh, I want to go buy cigarettes. Because they had, do you remember Joe the Camel from Marlboro? It was a guy that looked cool.
That was Camels.
It was Camel, a Marlboro, it was different, right? They all had like their own character. So the big cigarette companies, they ended up they had to ban them from using cartoons and music because they were like trying to convince kids in 10 years that it was cool to smoke cigarettes. It's
That's
fucked up.
wild. That's
right. So if you take it one step, if you reverse it and now you go to, like a lot of people don't realize this, all the big cigarette companies, they all own the big food companies.
Oh, really?
It's the same shit. Yeah, you don't even realize it. Like all these big companies are all owned by these nicotine-driven companies. It's really easy. You could Google it, and if you look at the companies that own Kellogg and all these other companies, you can see that like they all stemmed from addictive products. Okay, so that's kind of what they created here. Is they created addictive products, not necessarily by putting addictive things in food, even though I think sugar is probably the hardest thing to kick from taking. You ever do a sugar detox before, either of you?
It's like almost impossible, I feel like.
I've done it before. Headaches. It's fucking awful.
It's
right?
just sugar's in almost everything.
Yeah, what
It's
it is.
so hard to cut
Sugar's.
out.
If you were to go to a grocery store and you were to cut out processed food or sugar-based products, you'll get rid of about more than 2/3 of all the products in a grocery store. So like you think about that from an aisle perspective of how much of that just goes away. Okay. So anyways, just anything you want to add onto that before we go into this?
No, I just think it's interesting seeing what you grew up on, and the next thing.
I want to kind of talk more about
Keep going on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we jump to that, I want JJ to kind of go over his experience because there's a big age gap between me and him. You're 23.
I'm 24.
24 now.
How you're 37?
37.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we got a big age gap.
Yeah.
So definitely two different childhoods.
So from and we'll kind of we'll bridge that into kind of like I guess I would call it like theology of like kind of how nutrition has changed so much, and we'll kind of bridge into that, right? So the old food pyramid, right? If you're watching this, you can see this big emphasis on bread, cereals, rice, and pasta. Okay, and then when you go one level up, then you have your veggies, and then you have your fruits. You go one level up, and now it's even less protein-based products. As you know, if you drink any protein shakes, whey comes from cheese. It's protein, okay? So then they go even less on that, on meats and cheeses, yogurts, anything that's like nuts, anything that's protein dominant. And then you have your fats, oils, and sweets, okay? Because somebody decided one day that you're fat because you eat too much fat.
Well, I also think it's funny, too, how they're like, oh, stay away from the sweets. Your favorite cereal growing up was Lucky Charms with literal marshmallows.
Yeah.
They convinced you to eat candy, basically. I don't know if you look at the ingredients for marshmallows. It's just straight sugar.
Yeah, that's all it is. All those cereals, that's all it was. It was just packed with so much sugar and carbs. And there'd be like 3 grams of protein in the whole thing. You got more protein from the milk probably than you did from the cereal. So if you look at that, the food pyramid that most people that are listening to this probably grew up on or understood, if you're a little bit older, is there was an emphasis on just eating carbs. And that's where you got your energy sources from, okay? The flip side of that is your brain operates on carbohydrates and fats. Okay? But when you put in sugar-based carbohydrates, like something like a bread, right, or a pasta, something that is more complex carb, it doesn't really do your body justice when it comes to that, okay? So it's just so interesting that we grew up on something that, in my opinion, is so ass backwards to like how I eat today and how most people that understand basic nutrition from proteins, fats, and carbs, how that kind of falls, right? So I'll kind of have JJ like talk about like your experience of your bridge from this to the second one, because there was, in the early 2000s, they changed it again, and you refer to it what as the plate option?
It was, so in 2011, so I was 9 turning 10 in 2011. So I actually experienced a little bit of the food pyramid growing up. So I did see it.
Yeah.
They taught us in school. It was during our science class.
Yeah, and that's what's so crazy. I didn't mean to cut you off. Is they literally taught this in school.
Yeah. No, this was like a whole.
Right.
When they changed.
Mine too. They taught it in school.
When they changed to the MyPlate in 2011, I was living in Texas at the time. I remember having an assembly. It was like a whole big thing of like, everyone, we are changing, or the food pyramid has been changed to the MyPlate. And I remember, I mean, I was, like I said, 9, 10, 11 years old. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, I don't care. I don't pay attention to what I eat. But they have a whole big thing about it, and they're teaching us about this stuff and how they're transitioning from the food pyramid to the MyPlate. And they didn't even talk. They just said, all right, we're going to the MyPlate now. And then they just instantly started going on the MyPlate. Didn't even talk about the original food pyramid anymore. Yeah. They didn't say what was different. They didn't say any changes. They just said, all right, this is what we're doing now. This makes more sense based off of what they've seen from the past, 12 year, or however many years
it was roughly,
it
was about, you call it roughly 20 years, roughly, of them doing it.
Well, 1990, from 2011. And this one focuses on balanced meals instead of servings. Actually, I think a funny thing that they said for this is the government replaced the pyramid with a plate because people found pyramids confusing.
Well, people are dopey. we do know this.
They're just like, yeah, no, the people aren't understanding the pyramid, so we're gonna lay it out for you, right? And it's I said it before, but I'll say it again. It's 50% fruits and veggies, 25% grains, 25% proteins, and then dairy is in its own separate category off to the side. Yeah. And it just says dairy on the side. It doesn't say like how much of your diet it should be. It just says on the side.
Do you know what's so interesting about this too is this is about the time. Well, you got to remember, internet's booming now. Okay, everyone you have access to any information at your fingertips at this point. Most people at this point, everyone has smartphones, right? The internet is on your phone. The vast majority, yeah. The vast majority, right? So you have access to information now whenever you want it. Doesn't matter what it is, right? So it's so interesting that right around, because so I opened here in 2014, okay? And that's when I would say probably I was struggling with gaining weight. So I started really researching nutrition. Yeah. Like why, I was having a hard time gaining weight based on the activity that I was doing with competing competitively high level of CrossFit. I was burning a lot of calories, and I'm like, and all it was consumable calories, but making sure that you're eating the right category, enough of it. And for me and for most people, and what we talk about every day when anyone asks us any questions in any of the gyms, how much protein are you eating? Because it literally dictates that. So it's just so interesting to me that JJ grew up in a world where it was still, it's a lot better. This is a better, right? And the whole concept of, what do they call it? Well-rounded meal.
Yeah, well-rounded diet.
Right, a well-rounded diet.
Balanced meals.
Balanced meal is just them taking what they already did and just dividing it into 4.
That's all they did.
That's all they did. So they did. So the consumables went down, the bad consumables, but you really didn't increase the items that you should eat more of properly.
Yeah, you can see it encourages whole grains. This is where you start to see lean protein, though. Yes. And then they increase the fruits and veggies. Yeah. Which is a good thing. It was a step
fantastic.
In the right
it was. Yeah, but so the emphasis, right, on this is when I look at this and everything that you're saying, now they're like, okay, they're restricting red meat. When there's diets literally around just like carnivore style diets, just around red meat.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what they're doing is they're basically saying is like, oh, well, if you eat too much red meat, there's too much fat in it. So they're still being restrictive on the fat content of the items. And that's why you don't see fat in a category here, right? It's restrictive, but it's not necessarily the proper, in my opinion, right? The proper way to go.
And it is interesting too.
Because that's natural fat. That's not like you're putting butter or olive oil, not even butter. I don't like to say that because like if you use like good quality butter, it's not like bad for you, right? I remember being a kid and my grandparents were like, don't put too much salt on stuff. It's bad for you. When now we know, like we fucking all drink salt packets, right?
Well, if you ever get a cramp, I literally just put salt and water.
Yeah, like straight up. Like I just like sometimes I used to add it to my protein shakes where like I drink the element like salt packets, right? Every day. So it's like there's so many things that were just like created with like honestly just nonsense.
Yeah, no, it is like it's crazy too because it's funny that you bring up the fat, how it's not on the plate at all. Like they don't even put it.
They just got rid of it.
Can be they just took it out. But it's also interesting too. It nowadays like you look at the three main things you want to focus on is carbs, protein, fat. Yeah, and that's what you want to pay attention to what you're actually
because veggies
eating.
aren't their own category. There's a carb because that's where it always belonged. It always belonged in the carbohydrate category, you know.
This is also where you can see like the increase of vegetables because you can eat so many vegetables before it has any kind of impact on you compared to everything else. Like I don't know the exact breakdown.
So if you take these two before we hop to the newest one, right? You look at the changes of okay, it had emphasis on big grain and dairy, right, style products, with what was important at the top to be as little to zero consumption, right? That's what you wanted to watch the most of. Okay. So then you kind of look at those and then you kind of see like the direction of kind of food in general, you know, over like think about like fast food and you think about these other like, you know, where everything was very carbohydrate based. You go to back then, right? Like people used to go to like Outback Steakhouse and, you know, Red Robin and all these places. And most of the meals are very carb heavy, right? They still are. You go out to eat, most stuff is carb heavy, okay? So then you fast forward and now you look at this kind of style and I was like, okay, well, how like have well-rounded meals? Like what the fuck does that even mean, right? So when I look at that, I'm like, okay, I understand what they're trying to accomplish, but it's not really clear because there's too much variation. So now, you know, just like devil's advocate, think of it like this. So now think about all the diets that we've seen over the years. I've seen so many. And you know which one is pretty interesting that's been the same for like over 70 years, I think, has been Weight Watchers.
Really?
Weight Watchers, if you research old school Weight Watchers, it's all point system. But the points are based on fats, carbs, and protein intake. And that's how they dictate how many points you're allowed to have, okay? So the more proteins and like veggies you eat, the more consumable food you can have, where if you just eat pasta and cake, you eat your points for the whole day. So what they did was they took macronutrients, and those are the diets that we follow. If you've been a member at any of the gyms before, or you've ever done any of our internal challenges, they're all basic macronutrients, and it's almost identical to what Weight Watchers is. Because when I created those, I based them around those. Because it's consumable calories and the quality of food. The higher quality of food allows you to eat more food because the calories per meal are lower.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if you flip-flop it, if you don't, you're going to eat less food and be consuming more calories. And I always use whenever I talk about nutrition, Weight Watchers is so fantastic because that's literally what it is. Okay. So what I'm getting at is you have like a company like that that's been around forever. They've been kind of doing it, in my opinion, the proper way this whole time. And then you have the one-offs, right? Where people are like, oh, you're heavy because you eat too much fat. Okay, could be true to an extent. But then people started coming up with diets that were like no-fat diets. It works to an extent, and then it doesn't. Let me just finish this point. And then you have, you have vegetarian and vegan-based diets. Okay, I understand it, but I always argue that in order to consume enough protein, you have to eat so much carb-based protein, an example is chickpeas, to be able to equal the protein that I need you to take, you have to eat an immense amount of carbs to do that, right? So then there's always the issue when it comes to that. And then people started making up shit. I remember when brown rice was in. That was the thing. White rice was bad. But you know what the difference between brown rice and white rice? Do you even know?
No.
It's peeled rice. White rice is just peeled. Your body eating brown rice has a really hard time. Your gut has a really difficult time processing brown rice because it's not peeled. So if you look at like the Asian culture, they don't eat brown rice. They eat peeled white rice because it's a simple carb. Brown rice is a complex carb. White rice is not, right? People made up this whole thing about white rice is bad, bad, bad. And it's all marketing. It's people pitching something they're trying to sell you.
It is crazy. That's crazy to think about too. I mean, you think about all the marketing that's been thrown up. Because even when I was younger, I remember all the cereal commercials, especially all like the sugars and sweets commercials of like, oh, here's your like little dessert treat after you finally like, you finish your day. Come have a Twinkie or something like that. Special K. Actually, my favorite cereal growing up was Special K Chocolate Delight. It was advertised. They still make it. It's delicious.
You know which one kills me still? I see it once in a while. Is I love Frosted Cheerios. They like it's not in like all the grocery stores, but when I see it, it's like, oh, they're the greatest cereal ever.
But like Special K Chocolate Delight, like that was advertised. It's like, oh, you can have it for breakfast, but then they switched their advertising for it from where they said, oh, it's a late night snack actually. Have it after a long day, after you finish dinner.
They probably got fucking
like,
sued,
sweets.
Probably. You know? Like something dumb.
It's Kellogg's. They'll freaking keep coming out with all.
But you understand, like all these things, these companies just pump shit out, and you know, and everyone there's always was something, and then. Okay, this is something, we dealt with this when I opened the women's gym in particular. Sorry, ladies, but this won't hurt, but it's going to be directed to that demographic. Females in general were brainwashed at a certain point of carbs are bad. Okay, you can't lose weight because you have too many carbs. So I used to have women that would come in and we would give them meal plans, and I vividly remember this. They'd be like, oh, veggies are carbs. I can't have those. And I was like, what? And I had to like figure out a way to explain it that like, no, like, okay, I understand what you're saying, that it is categorized that way, but you're not losing weight because you're not having any carbs at all.
Well, they were definitely also paying a lot more attention to that stuff and listening to all the stuff that was going out now.
Of course, because everything is trendy. Nutrition has become it's become less factual and more trendy. That's like the best way to put it. It's become more trendy than anything else. What's the next thing to try? I remember when I first started CrossFit, and Patty, you've been doing this a long time too with CrossFit. It was all carnivore diet and keto. Yes. Right? There was another one too, wasn't there? I can't remember. There was so many.
I've only heard.
But it was a 100% meat-based diet, and it was basically all red meat. That's what it was. And people would lose a lot of weight quickly with it, and then they would kind of plateau because their ketosis would be it would be more difficult to pinpoint. But these diets were thrown at people, like in the CrossFit world. It was all about maintaining or increasing your muscle tissue. So by default, it's your consumable is protein. And then someone decided to market and package red meat as just eat carnivore food. That's it, because that's what we were designed to do. And paleo, yes, that's how long ago this was. So paleo was like a huge, it took over everybody. If you did CrossFit, it's like, oh, you do paleo? This is what it became. It was fucking annoying, right? Because it's not really a well-rounded diet. Do I agree with that? Consumables of red meat and protein as your number one? Yeah, absolutely. But I do think that you need to make sure that you're still you're consuming, a nice blend. And that's why when we talk about the last piece, it was a nice blend of what you grew up on, and then basically took what I grew up on and just fucking flipped it upside down.
That's exactly what it did.
Straight up.
It is funny too, because obviously growing up, they taught the plate, and then just slowly over time, they just straight up stopped talking about it. And I remember the more I talked to my strength coach in college, I can't really say my high school coaches because not many of them were super knowledgeable about the nutrition aspect of things, mainly because they were just coaches, right?
But they don't teach you this in college either.
No, the only reason I was taught it in college is because I played college sports, and I would be with my strength coach all the time, and I'd tell him, hey, I want to lose weight or gain weight, and he'd break it down for me. And then obviously like it started to grow a lot more with social media and TikTok and everything of like the gym culture, and then people talking about their diets of how they're focusing on you want to eat your pounds, your how much you want to weigh in grams of protein should be like the base, and then you do your carbs and fats.
That's like the
limited.
best. That's the best rule of thumb. Is that.
But it's funny too how that's now the best rule of thumb. How it's slowly been phased. Like the plate was slowly phased out. Not like phased out,
they
but
they never really talked about it not being a thing anymore. And a lot of people, like for me, and I would say Patty's probably in the same example as you. You don't even remember the plate one, like slightly, right? I don't even remember seeing it. I just don't.
Well, how old were you in 2011?
I graduated college.
Yeah, so they weren't teaching that to you at all.
No, but and I took nutrition courses in college, and we learned the basics of these things, but they teach you the basics of macronutrients, right? And that's the difference, is they teach it in college totally different than how they teach it at like the general population level, right?
No, they just tell you, they're like, these people aren't going to research what they're eating. You just got to be like, follow this,
Exactly.
this general philosophy, and you should be good. Keyword is should be throughout the day. But it's interesting to see how the RFK food pyramid kind of has not really been around, but people have already started to follow it for a few years now. It's just RFK was like, all right, this is what it is now. This is how it's been following. It's found to have worked, and this is what we need to actually start teaching the youth. And so the core philosophy here, emphasis on whole foods. It emphasizes that a lot. So none of the processed stuff,
That's what they
we've been
changed,
talking about.
whole meals, right? So now it's literally quality. That's what that means. It's
Yes.
quality food versus non-quality base.
Higher protein intake, animal fats and full fat diet, full fat dairy, and then reduced ultra processed foods and sugars. That's the core philosophy of it now, which, like I said, is what we've already started to transition to, at least from what I've seen and from the people around my age who have been in the gym all the time. They're working out constantly, and they are like trying to figure out the best nutrition guide, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
So that's why it's interesting that this just came out this year, and it's literally what you grew up with flipped upside down.
It's literally
I'll
100%
put a side-by-side comparison.
It's pretty wild.
Like, it's just the original food pyramid's like this, same exact order. The new one is just like this.
And it's in order. They change like the fats a little bit on the placement because they recategorize them. So like to your point, right, is being in the fitness industry for over a decade, right? I've seen so many different diets and this and this and this. And it's the emphasis has always been, my number one question is always, well, how much protein do you eat? Always. So now you fast forward to this pyramid, it's literally the first question that should be asked is how much consumable protein do you have? And then you go into the other things like the whole foods and all those other things, right? And it's literally put whole grain to where you don't even need to consume any of it if you didn't want to, because it's literally put on the top of, if you look at that and you look at the original one, it says fats, oils, and sweets use sparingly. That's what the government wrote. Use sparingly. So now you flip-flop this, and now at the top, it's literally grain complex carbs that they're now labeling as use sparingly. So that means that if you didn't have any of that, it would not affect you negatively, or it wouldn't have a positive or like effect on you if you had any bread or not.
It is like, it's interesting too, like we were talking about this off air right before we started, of how I thought it was crazy of the emphasis on grains. In the original food
11
pyramid.
to 16 servings, and I said it before, it's like a whole fucking loaf of bread.
And I'm like, nowadays when I think about what I'm eating, I don't think of grains at all. Like like sure, like maybe I'll have a few, but I'm not like thinking of it like as a conscious thing for me to be eating. I'm thinking of whole grain, whole bread, whole like actual complex carbs. Trying to be smart with it, at least as smart as I can be with it. I'm still learning a lot about this stuff. I mean, but it is crazy how you just completely flip-flopped.
I know. So
all of it.
Basically, what I was trying to, so when you think about how they changed it, being in fitness for so long and seeing all these diets over the course of the years, if you're in this space, we've been doing this for a while. And a lot of the professionals in the nutrition is like, if you're a nutritionist or if you're a personal trainer or you're giving any nutritional advice, most people, I would say greater than 80%, are probably following basic fats, carbs, proteins, right? Because everything falls into that category, okay? So for this to finally be released in my opinion, it's like a nice like understanding to see, because we look at the in general, there was, I don't know, we talked about this I think a week or two ago in one of our previous podcasts about the alcohol industry.
Oh, how it's
about
dying?
how it's down. I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's like
lot.
I think it's like 20% or greater. You can look it up,
Yeah, I'm
and
gonna
we'll
look it
have the
up.
exact number. But the beer and liquor industry is at an all-time low in like ever. I can't remember what the percentage. We're gonna pull it up right now.
Let's see. The global alcohol industry has experienced a massive downturn, losing an estimated $830 billion in market value over the last 4 years.
In only 4 years. So we're talking about COVID to now, right after COVID to now. Because during COVID, it jumped through the roof for obvious reasons, right? And then look at the decrease. So what I'm getting at is people are taking health and wellness as a priority now. Because if you fast forward to, you know, our parents' generation and then our grandparents, right? Their emphasis was whatever the doctor told them they were going to do. Oh, your blood pressure is high, here's medication for that, right? Oh, you have pain, here's pain medication. Like, it was very easy. That's how they fix things. They fix things with medication, and the doctor knew all. In my opinion, primary care is the biggest joke in medical practice. If you're in primary care, you're doing it like you're not solving anything, right? Because there's a general consensus of like, oh, people come for colds and this, but it's like you're not catching things being a primary care. The specialist, if you're a kidney specialist, a liver specialist, those are the doctors, right? So primary care spends little to no time on nutrition in general. This stat I've talked about before too. In medical school, they spend like an hour or two max in all of medical school on nutrition.
Really?
So why should that person put an emphasis and be believable? This is to my point. Why should I listen to that person, that 7-year-old doctor that's overweight and is telling me that I should eat less fat? Right? It just doesn't really make any sense. So what I'm getting at is that generation was so whatever the doctor says I got to do, whatever that article came out from that physician who I follow, I'm going to follow that. So then you backtrack to like our parents' generation. It was kind of like a hybrid of like they still took medical advice, but they have information at their fingertips, right? Because they're functioning in society with the internet and their smartphones, so they're able to look things up. And then you take it a step further to our generation is like, so we have even more information. So then you look at like a great example is like big pharma with the amount of medication that they prescribe younger children is lower than it used to be. They used to just throw people on, you know, Ritalin and these ADHD medications, right? So a lot of that has decreased because the joke is always like how people like, oh, what did you go to WebMD and look up your problems? To an extent, it saves you a lot of time and energy because you're not going to a doctor for them to tell you the same kind of thing. But like you could also overdo it and be like, okay, you know,
if you have an actual major
if you have an actual problem, just don't go. You know, you become a hypochondriac. I've seen that before too, where people are like that. But my point being is, as that generation has kind of aged out from information based, there's so much more information for someone to basically Google. I could literally Google. You could chat GPT right now and say, what should I do? What kind of diet should I be on? I'm an active 24-year-old, and it will spit out exactly what you should be on, and it will follow this. That's how simple it is now. So it's just so interesting that it took 45 years almost to get to an actual real functioning diet that should work for most people.
That's our government. That's the government. All this is official government stuff. I literally have on there original USDA food pyramid that was made by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Same thing with the plate, and now with the RFK one. This is our actual government. It took us about 40 years to figure this out, and now we're here. But it's good. We made it, right? Now we're here. Now follow this. I also included my past meal plans on here.
Yeah, this is a good model to kind of look at so you can understand. So let's talk about, before you say that. So if you were to, JJ's going to explain to you what he eats in a day based on consumable foods for him to weigh a certain amount, and he's been competitive a lot more in CrossFit and improving at a really fast pace. So this is a requirement as part of his training regimen, okay? If you were to backtrack this and he would just be eating on a normal basis, if you were to take this on how much fats, carbs, and proteins you'd have, it would be completely flip-flopped on the grams based on what you're doing.
Yeah. So for a few months ago, I was at about 185, 190 pounds, and I said I want to get up to 205, right? I want to gain some muscle. I want to be able to lift a little heavier. So I went to Shannon, and she gave me a meal plan, and it had me at my day. I had to have 220 grams of protein, 435 grams of carbs, and 125 grams of fat. Veggies was a fistful per meal, which is 3 meals. And then my total calorie intake was 3,745 calories.
Isn't that crazy, the amount of calories that you think it, because if you were to eat the same food, but you're not following that, your consumable calories would probably be double or more than that.
Oh, 100%. And like, in order for me to follow this, I was eating 3 meals, 3 full meals, plus 2 big snacks in between while snacking throughout the day. So it's hard to get this with only eating whole foods because naturally you just have more calories than like a protein shake. So I would be having to have protein shakes in between, or like the protein bars, any kind of like
for fillers.
stuff. Yes, for filler stuff. But for the main meals, I was always looking for about 44 grams of protein per meal. Carbs was a lot. It was a lot of freaking carbs.
Well, and again, when he says carbs, guys, it's not him eating consumable, like, you could hit those carbs really easy if you're eating a lot of breads and, whole grain products.
White rice. Ezekiel bread was big.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Ton of Ezekiel bread. Oh my God, I can't with the Ezekiel bread anymore. And that was really it. That was all like the main carbs I was going for.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is, so that's a tremendous, even though it's only 3,700 calories, that is an incredible amount of food. Most people, when they go on diets like that, struggle to eat. For me, I had a really hard time just eating all that food. And that's why I struggled with weight gain for so long. I just couldn't eat it all.
Yeah, I was vice versa. I freaking love eating. So I was like, oh, I can actually eat a lot now. This is great. But no, like there was days where I would think I was at a good spot and then we would go to a Devils game and I'm like, shit, I got to eat a lot there. And before the game starts, I'm like stuffing my face. I feel gross. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So now something to kind of finish this on is, do you remember, because we'll all relate to this, do you remember like in high school, like pasta parties? You had to carb up before the game.
Oh, yes.
Football or whatever it was. So that's how fucked up this is. We were predetermined to be like, you need carbs for energy for tomorrow's big game. It makes no sense at all. Zero. Because, okay, yeah, your body burns carbs for energy, but why aren't you just eating protein?
Yeah.
Right. I remember going to pasta parties, dude, and it was just pasta.
Trays and trays of pasta.
They didn't even serve anything else. It was pasta, sauce, and cheese. That was it. That was it. That's all it was. But that's what it was. It was like, oh, I gotta, they brainwashed generations. They'd be like, oh, you want to be good at sports? You got to carb up the night before. Okay, it just becomes believable because you think the people teaching this to you are educated in it, but they've been fooled for the last 50 years to understand that.
And that's what that was the thing when I was in high school. I graduated in 2020, and for football, before every game, we'd have our senior dinner, and it was hosted by a different senior every single week. And again, trays and trays of pasta with a few meatballs on top, and we were all like all the linemen. I was a lineman. We're all fighting for the meatballs.
Yeah, yeah, because that's what's so crazy. That's like probably one of the most vivid things to think about from a comparison, were the pasta parties. Just do it, But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the gist of this, and understanding how diets have changed so much and how marketing and media has driven, in my opinion, really awful ideas into people to understanding what nutrition is. And again, I think I'm biased because I've been in fitness for so long, over 2 decades, from being competitive athlete and then coaching and teaching and running the facilities. it's just so interesting on how uneducated people are when it comes to really, really basic nutrition of proteins, fats, and carbs. Only a few years ago, they used to classify alcohol as a carb, and they've removed it a few years ago into its own category because it's dead carbs. Right? We've talked about this a little bit. I don't know if we did on air, but when you have a beer, for instance, your body doesn't process really anything else for up to 48 hours because it's trying to process the bad carbs from the alcohol. So the effects of someone drinking one day actually affects you 3 days in total from drinking. So that's why the government finally moved it out of carbs, because something that we used to pitch to people, right? And I know this is kind of a dumb sales pitch, right? But this is what we did was I would tell people that were drinkers, right? Okay, drink a potato-based vodka like Tito's instead of a grain-based, because complex carb is a grain. So if you remove that and it's potato, it's better, it's still alcohol, but it kind of is that, right? But what I'm saying is like you had to kind of almost trick people into like trying to eat, to move them into the proper consumables. You know, it's something as simple as soda to diet soda. It's still not great for you, but at least it's baby steps.
Step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's a little thing. Yeah, the only other thing we have on here is my current diet, which is now flipped from what I did before. So I hit the 205 and now I'm cutting down back down to 185. And it's roughly the same. The biggest difference is my protein intake is a lot higher. Not a lot higher.
Oh God, dude.
It's 20 grams more.
I don't miss those days.
My protein intake when I was gaining weight was 23.5% of my total day. Now it's at 40.6%.
Yeah, but your calorie dropped 1,000 calories.
And that's the craziest part, is that now I have to have 240 grams of protein, but we cut my carbs in half from 435 to 205. And then my fat was also cut in half from 125 to 65. And my total calories went from 3,745 to 2,365.
Yeah. So for people that are listening to this and watching this, this is what JJ's doing is a very similar to what a bodybuilder would do on a gain and then a cut, right? It's very, very similar setup. It can be done together. It's a little bit more challenging.
Very challenging.
But it can be done together, but you have to be so dialed in on food, and it's just difficult on lifestyles, you know, to have work full time and be able to, you know, eat the correct amount of products. But yeah, biggest takeaway from this is take a look at, you know, the new food pyramid and try to understand it. And you can literally look at the items on the placement of what it is, and you should be eating a tremendous amount of protein-based products. Biggest advice is watch the fat content to an extent in the protein, but try to understand, okay, if I want to hit 200 grams of protein, try to visually understand how much food that actually is. Before you kind of be like, okay, I need to watch the fat intake too.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe, you know, some people have a hard time. Like, I know that for me is like, I hate eating turkey meat all the time because there's no fat in it. Right? So I'll go to a very low fat ground beef if I'm doing something like that. Right?
Yeah. What I try to do for these meal plans is I take my total grams, right? And I split it up. So I try to split up into 3 meals, but 5 total, I guess, meals is what you want to call it, with the 2 protein shakes mixed in there. And I just divide it by 5. So 220 divided by 5, 240 divided by 5. And that's how much I try and target per meal. And that's helped me a ton of reaching my goals.
Yeah. This is the best way to do it, is do it up evenly. You'd be surprised on how quickly you can consume about 40 to 50 grams of protein in certain products. Some products are going to be more dense in protein, so the consumable volume is a lot less. You know, and you just play around with it. And this is, in my opinion, the best way for someone to stay on track. And diets like this can be phased. So what I mean by that is you could do a diet for 3-4 months, have great results, and then you kind of plateau. Then we just move you into another phase. And that's what we do here at all the Station Athletic gyms, is we phase people into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we continue to phase people to continuously have results driven from the actual diet perspective.
And it works. Joe knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this now for well over a decade.
12 years.
Yeah, over a decade now.
Are we at 12 years next month?
Yeah.
Is that what we said? God.
Established in 2014.
12 years, April 1st. Not a joke.
So anything else you want to add on before we wrap
that's
up?
it. Again, take a look at the food pyramids, kind of see it. When you're thinking about nutrition in general, keep it really simple. Proteins, fats, carbs.
Yep. Don't be a sheep. Do your own research. We'll see you at the gym.